start off with an announcement and let you all know, if you have not met our new Director of Economic Development, Kevin here. He's going to stand up and wave. Please come and introduce yourself. We're trying to get him well immersed in the community very, very quickly and get to work. So very happy to have him on board. Some events we have coming up. Early voting goes through the end of this week. So please, if you haven't done early voting, please do that. If not, our election day is next Tuesday, May 24th. So be sure that your voice is heard and cast your vote. Monday, May 23rd, we have a ribbon cutting at Kylo Elementary School with our Dawson County Women's Club for their lending library at 1 p.m. Very exciting around school these days because that is one of their very few last days. Tuesday, May 24th, we're having our Chamber 45th Chamberversary at the Chamber. Everyone pray for no liquid from the sky that day because everything is outside. We're going to have axe throwing, beer and wine, live music. We do encourage everyone to try to bring something. We want to draw door prizes throughout the entire event. We went to a conference a couple months ago and everybody brought something from their hometown and they drew constantly throughout the event and it was really cool. So everyone can bring the Chamber a present for our Chamberversary and then we will pull tickets or business cards for them to win all throughout the event. Another ribbon cutting Wednesday, May 25th at Trey Thomas at his new State Farm Agency at 3 p.m. That is here in downtown Dawsonville. Friday, May 27th, we're having a ribbon cutting with Timberline Glamping at Amicalola Falls State Park at 11:30. And then Thursday, June 2nd, we're having another ribbon cutting. Everyone's trying to get their ribbon cuttings in for y'all and head out for vacation. On June 2nd, we're at Destiny Mortgage Lending at 11 a.m. and that too is down here in downtown Dawsonville at the Pink House, right downtown. Then of course our business after hours in June, we are doing that a week earlier than normal, so it will be on Tuesday, June 21st, and it's for Medical Plaza 400. Of course, we have a golf tournament August 15th. My board members just got their packets of their 50-50 raffle tickets, so come see them, and they will be happy to sell $10 raffle tickets or sponsorships or teams or anything. They have a little competition going, and we did get the Venmo set up, by the way, so I will send that out to y'all. We've got it set up since the board meeting. And then another event on October 1st, we're having our Fawcett Farm Sunflower Run 5K. That's super fun family event that we'll be hosting out at Fawcett Farms, running through the sunflowers. It's beautiful. So go ahead and get signed up today if you would like to do that. And now I'm going to turn it over to our membership director, Savannah here.
All right, good afternoon. As Mandy mentioned, my name is Savannah Garrett and I'm the membership director here at the Dawson County Chamber. We are so excited to welcome some of our newest members since our last time that we met. So we have Carmine Dawsonville, Vicki Jones with Anchor Real Estate, Tim Gibson, who's also with Anchor Real Estate, Jonathan McKibben, a new State Farm agent as well, Timberline Glamping at Amicalola Falls State Park, Destiny Mortgage Lending, we'll be having their ribbon cutting soon, Linear Orthodontics, Mathnesium of Coal Mountain, Lily Creek Farms Event Center, and Love Caleb Inc. So I'm not sure if we have any of our new members in attendance today. Okay. Perfect. Well, we're excited to welcome them, and so if you see them in the community or if you're able to come out to any of our ribbon cuttings, please do it. It's a great way to support the new businesses. Turn it over to Mandy to introduce our speakers.
All right. This is always one of our favorite business luncheons that we do. We're very lucky to have such engaged local legislative officials, so very happy to have Will Wade and Steve Gooch here to address you today. They're going to arm wrestle to see who goes first. I think so. We just they already decided. So Will won.
With Will, remember?
So Will Wade is a lifelong resident of Dawson County. In November 2020, Will was elected to serve the citizens of Lufkin, Dawson, and Forsyth County in the Georgia State House District 9 seat. Additionally, Will served on the Dawson County School Board over 15 years, from 2004 to 2020. As you can see, Will has served this community in many different capacities. He is a former governor's education appointee to the Georgia Mountain Regional Commission for 10 years and a past ex officio member of the Dawson County Development Authority. He and his wife are also 2011 Leadership Georgia graduates. Please join me and welcome Will.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right, well, it's great to be home. I got to hear from our senator earlier. He had to go down to Atlanta last night and this morning, and I'm glad that that's what the senator got to do, because I did not have to do that. I love being in the district, but you know, he didn't have anybody running against him either, so that's a blessing. He's still on top. In all seriousness, I appreciate the Chamber and what you guys do. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and kind of share with you a little bit about this legislative session. And thank you, yeah. A little bit bright. Yeah, the spotlight. I've got a face for radio. Y'all all have confirmed it. No, in all seriousness, this legislative session has been, it was fast and furious, I guess would be the way I would describe it. But we had a exceptionally effective year when it came to policy initiatives that not only the governor's office, but also many in-house leadership and the Senate leadership, as well as just what I call myself a rank and file legislator who is there to try to serve and represent and be the voice of this district. And you know, we were intrigued last time coming out of a pandemic, you know, in 2021, and still dealing with, you know, the balance between lives and livelihoods and ensuring that the business community could try to, you know, do what it does best, which is to navigate difficult times, allow for, you know, a limited amount of government involvement, but also allow for individual businesses to figure out a way to thrive. And we were able to continue to do that this session. Some of the highlights I want to share with you. I don't know exactly what the Senator's going to talk about, but I'll talk about from the House perspective. And that there's three main things I think that affect the business the most. And one of those things was just the economic environment, right? What is it that the state is doing to either benefit or potentially to harm local businesses and local communities from being able to generate revenue, take care of their clients, take care of their employees, and serve their community, whatever that capacity is, whether you've got 5 employees or 50 employees, whether you're a school system that is a large employer, but all of those interconnected pieces, we wanted to ensure, okay, what are we doing to help the business environment in Georgia? So some of those things include not only a tax cut, but a tax rebate. And what that does is that puts more money in every single Georgia pocket, that then they can continue to spend those dollars here in this community. And that generates additional revenue. At the end of it, this is kind of more recent, you know, we had the tax cut on gas. So we suspended the tax cut. I've heard that there's discussion about extending it further because of the national and global environment that we're in. I support that initiative because I think we need to make sure that Georgia continues to be, even though it's extremely high when we go to the gas pump. Because I've got kids that are second grade and kindergarten. What's really fun is my son is learning his 5s and 10s in kindergarten. So he's like watching the gas from 5, 10. And he's like, whoa, we hit 100. That is the positivity of it. Thank you, son, for making me smile for spending $133 that day. But believe it or not, in Georgia, we're the lowest ranked average gas price in the nation. And large part is because we're no longer charging those gas taxes. And yet revenues in the state are still doing fine as far as the entirety of our month-to-month state revenues. The other piece that I think is extremely important that we work on is looking at the emphasis on, and this is something that I can go ahead and give credit to Senator Gooch, who was there for the first 2 years of the Governor Kemp administration, and that is the expansion of economic development outside of Metro Atlanta. You don't hear a lot of news when it comes to that new small business that's decided to locate in Dawson County. You're not going to hear that in the agency. They're not going to talk about it, but it's a record-breaking, I mean, the last 2 years, we've had like 68 to 72%, depending on which stat you want to run, is outside of the metro area of the state, where new jobs are coming. I look around this room and I think, I remember being here last year. There's some folks in here that I don't remember from last year. I'm like, man, this means we're still growing and thriving. That's important for a community. And what I want you to hear as your representative is when I visit with other legislators and they're telling me stories about their district where they're seeing population shrinkage, that they're seeing businesses close, they're seeing literally family businesses making the decision to shut down because they just don't have growing potential for new customers. And they're trying to decide what part of the state we need to be in. And so we are very blessed to have what we have. And there's always going to be, you know, those cave people, right? Citizens in virtually everything. It's hard. And guys, look, I understand there's arguments to be had about, you know, what kind of density do we want? What kind of, you know, growth do you want? How much growth is too much growth? Those are all great conversations to have. But everybody needs to be a part of that conversation, not just a loud, angry person, right? You've got to check your emotions and be able to work with local leaders. So I'm thankful that we were able to have conversations with our local commissioners and our city council about, hey, these COVID dollars are coming in. What can we put in the pipeline? I don't know, Chairman Thurman, we had worked together on putting a project I was able to share with Senator Gooch. We're looking to help try to bring in some state grants for state matching dollars for the expansion of the health facility here in Dawson County because y'all know that you need it and y'all are planning for that in 2024, 2025. We got to have those conversations now to be able to make sure that we can have those funding or those grants or even bond packages available. So as a state legislator, I was excited that, hey, I had a seat at the table to advocate immediately with the chairman on the House side, thought our senator, he do the same thing on that side because it is our state, it's our tax money, and we want to make sure that it comes back home to help benefit. And I mean, how many folks know the stress that the local Department of Public Health had during the pandemic? I mean, this is not partisan. This is everybody saw the fact that that facility does not meet the needs of this community in 2022. So I'm very thankful that the Board of Commissioners are thinking ahead, and we're finally going to be able to do something about it and do a good state and county project together. And last, I have to talk a little bit about education. It was a big year for education. You might hear about that. You know, pay attention to the talking points coming out of Atlanta and out of DC. Well, we took a little bit of a different approach. And, you know, I have a background in education, so I was given an opportunity to work on basically three main pieces of education legislation this session, but I also had insight and discussions on all the bills on the House side. And I was able to look at it and say, okay, there are some people that want us to do X, Y, and Z, which is way too far. You know, there are people that want to label and say, hey, we were trying to duplicate what they did in Virginia. No, what we did was we actually listened to our constituents that were sharing concerns about specific examples of things that were creating divisions within our classroom. Sometimes those divisions were not being borne out here in this district, right? We've got a phenomenal school system, but it's still a system. Every once in a while, you have a mistake. Damon, I mean, you're a really good superintendent, but you're not Jesus, right? You're not perfect. And every once in a while, you'll find these situations where you got to have state to basically just update the law and update the code to make sure that you're facilitating an equal communication for all parties. And my philosophy was let's keep the student at the center of that focus. That's what we did when we were on the school board. And I took that same philosophy, working with other legislators as it came to legislation. You know, I'm just a straight shooter, so I'm going to tell you, there are folks that are very, very happy about House Bill 1084, which was put into law that's going to make sure that we don't allow divisive concepts to be taught in the classrooms that pits children against each other based on their race. Folks, I believe that every single child has an incalculable value, no matter the color of their skin. Doesn't matter, period. They have unlimited potential that I know I see as a father of two young children. The world teaches things, the classroom doesn't. And so what we did is we made sure that we said, look, these are non-divisive concepts that by and large, even on the Democratic side when we were in committee, we made specific changes to ensure that we continue to teach history in its fullness with rigor, not trying to cover up the past ugliness of our history in this country or in this world, but also not blame children in today's society for the errors of the past. And they can do so with academic, excellence. They can do so in a professional manner. And I believe that we live in a society today in which the far right and far left are trying to get into our classrooms. But we don't need political indoctrination. How many of you guys remember when we took what they said was prayer in the classroom? Right? Now, there are people that fault that tooth and nail. And I understand that. I have a faith. But I also have a decision now as a parent that it's my family's job to represent that faith to my children. It's not a teacher's responsibility. We didn't allow religious proselytizing going on in the classroom. I believe that what we did is we set a standard now. We won't allow political proselytizing going on in the classroom. My teachers, when I was a student, I didn't know what their politics were. I didn't know if they were Democrat, didn't know if they were Republican, didn't know if they were independent, libertarian, whatever. They were my math teacher, they were my history teacher, they were my coach. They just cared about me and my success. That's what's best about the school system here, and I think that's what that legislation did. And the other thing I want to touch on, and this is the last thing, and I'll turn it over to the senator. In that bill, we also added a key provision that is going to ensure that biological males do not compete against biological females. And there are people that want to label this as anti-something else. And I respect every person coming from a different belief. But when I sat down with people from the LGBT community, ACLU, the GHSA, they actually had an agreement that for safety purposes, and the medical community acknowledged that biological males have greater bone density, they have muscle tissue weaknesses. Women generally have more flexibility. Now, is it to say that there aren't some women that have an opportunity to compete in male sports? That continues. Title IX is still there. I'm a big fan of Title IX because guess what? I know that we live in a state and country that's going to allow my daughter, whatever sport that she wants to play, she will have that opportunity. And if there's not a competitive sport that other females play, if she wants to be, let's say she wants to be a kicker on the football team, she's going to have that right in Title IX. But if she wants to be a gymnast, or she wants to be a volleyball player, or she wants to play girls basketball, the males can play against other males. It's just that simple. And folks, other people, especially the national ensuring safety and fairness in our school sports, we work with the GHSA, and folks, they voted, this is a statewide organization, 62-0 to adopt a policy that met that law requirement. To me, that's a resounding, we figured something that was right. And if there are students that fall into the category that they want to say this is anti about, those students can still try out and be on this team with their sport. And I've been around schools in which they're very inclusive when kids are trying to figure things out. It's not limiting their opportunity in sports. So anyway, just for those, because I've had lots of questions about that legislation, I don't want to share that with you guys. So ultimately, it's an honor to serve you. I don't know how long I'll be in Atlanta. I know my wife is thankful that I come home every night. I'm thankful I come home every night because I don't ever want to stay in Atlanta if I can help it. That place is crazy. So I'll let Gooch say how does he survive in Atlanta when he has to stay down there. But ultimately, I'm very excited what we did in this session, and I appreciate being your representative. And I will put in this last plug. National Federation of Independent Businesses, a lot of small businesses in this state, this country are members, and I was honored to receive one of their awards for having a 100% voting record for their issues. I'm a small business guy, and I'm always going to be that way. I'm going to support local communities and support small business. Thank you very much.
Next, we have a very familiar face, Senator Steve Gooch. He was elected to the Georgia State Senate in 2010. Senator Gooch presents includes Bannon, Union, Gilmer, White, Dawson, and parts of Pickens and Forsyth. He was elected as Majority Whip of the Senate Majority Caucus in 2014. Prior to serving as the Senate Majority Whip, Senator Gooch served as the Secretary of the Senate Majority Caucus and as Chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. He has some catching up to do. Yes, he's off to a great start. Senator Gooch graduated from North Georgia College and State University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in public administration. Prior to being elected to the Georgia State Senate, he served as the sole Luncheon County Commissioner. Help me welcome Senator Steve Gooch.
I really didn't know if this microphone was even on. Can y'all hear it? There's a little bit of work on here. All right, well, good. Thanks for having me today. Mandy, thank you for what you do for the Chamber of Commerce. I spent the morning with the Georgia Chamber of Commerce downtown Atlanta. I can tell you this is a lot prettier setting, and even the audience is a lot prettier. I was down there working on behalf of some other senators. We do have an election next week. Has anybody heard of this? There's 34 Republican senators and 22 Democrat senators in the Senate. So there's a total of 56. In order for us to pass a bill, it takes 29 votes. Commissioner, it only takes 3 votes from the county commission, but we have to get to 29. So part of my job as the majority whip is to make sure we have the 29 votes to pass the bill or to defeat the bill. So that's part of my job. So we were downtown Atlanta trying to make sure that our senators get reelected next Tuesday. And the House has the same situation, 180 House members. It requires 91 votes to pass the bill out of the House chamber. And Will has I think he has a little competition on the ballot next Tuesday. I hope he will vote for Will Wade if you haven't already. Will has done an extraordinarily good job as the freshman representative from the 9th District. People down there really respect him a lot. They value his opinion. If you look at some of the bills that he has co-sponsored, he's probably on 15 or 20 key pieces of legislation, most of which passed the House and the Senate this year, and the governor has signed them. Will's expertise is in banking and education, so he's already got a reputation down there for the go-to guy for education bills. So maybe you did good training to get him to Atlanta to represent all of y'all. He does put the children first, I can tell you that. What he said is 100% true. He works hard to do what's right. We believe in local control, but my theory on local control is what's best for the child. And who knows that better? No one knows it better than the parent. So we think that that decision should be made by the parent first and then the government second, not the other way around. A lot of people in Atlanta think the government knows best, and I don't know of anybody here that would agree with that. If you do, raise your hand. I think so. Except for Carl Rocker, and he left. Successful things that we did this year. Will did a good job of recapping the highlights. One thing he didn't talk about was one that most people in this room, I think, agree with, and that is to protect your Second Amendment rights. Most of you in here either have a gun, or your spouses have a gun, or you grew up in a family with firearms. Hopefully you use those firearms to protect yourself first. You use it for recreational hunting and do whatever you want with it. But you shouldn't be using it to break the law and to grab it and cause harm on others. That's a crime. Now, if you turn the news on this morning, you saw that a guy got shot last night in a restaurant down on Piedmont Street, right in Buckhead. We've had dinner there recently. Fogo de Chao. I've sat in that restaurant many nights during session, and it shows in my waistline that we should not be afraid to walk into a local restaurant and be in fear of losing our lives because someone else has a gun and decides to shoot a room full of people. That's happening all over our country. Last night was an unfortunate incident. I think the guy that was shot had a mental illness. And so we dealt with that issue as well this year. So we passed constitutional carry, which means you no longer have to pay the government for the right to carry your gun that you already should have the rights to do under the Second Amendment. So we repealed the law requiring a permit. You still can't own a gun if you're a convicted felon. Most criminals don't care what the law requires. They're going to do what they're going to do. So we did restore your Second Amendment rights this year, a good ways back to the original intent of the Second Amendment. The mental health bill that passed, I think it was House Bill 1013, came out of the House first. It was a bill that came from about a 2 or 3 year study that Kevin Tanner started when he was a state rep. You all remember some of that dialogue in our previous meetings we've had in this room where he shared some of his work with you. That bill was worked on for a couple of years. It came out of the House, came over to the Senate worked on it. We've changed some provisions in the bill based on the concerns of people like you back home that looked at it and said, this is a little bit too far reach, takes away some of our rights and privileges. So we made some adjustments on it, passed it out of the Senate, went back to the House. Both chambers passed that bill unanimously. I believe that 100% on both sides. And I'll say that to say this, there are a lot of people in this country, in this state in particular, who need help. They have no family members to help them. They have no support systems. Churches can no longer provide the kinds of services that these people need. They're truly mentally impaired. They live under bridges down in Atlanta. They live on the streets. If you go to the Capitol or you go anywhere near City Hall down there, every night they come in and bring out their sleeping bags. They have tents. They literally have what's called tent cities where they sleep on the ground. A lot of them, they sleep on concrete sidewalks with nothing under the road. They're truly in terrible need of help. This bill will go a long ways to help some of those people. There's people in this community today that have mental illness that need help, and our health care system has a lot of resources to provide those needed services, but the insurance companies were not required to pay for those services, like they do if you were out break a foot or have a cut. We go to the doctor to show our insurance card. Now those insurance companies will be required to cover some of those mental illnesses, and I think that'll help some of these people that truly need help for a long, long time. It's not just older people, it's young children as well. You probably have children in your school system today that need some help with some issues, either it's depression or other things that they're dealing with at home. So House Bill 1013 was probably the most significant piece of legislation that was passed this year. And I say that, and I mean it. Income tax cuts are important because we want you to keep the money that you earn and put it back into your family, put it back into your businesses. That was an important piece of legislation. The income tax today was a 5.25% rate. It now will roll back to 4.99%. It'll take about 3 years to get there. We did that because we have a large budget of $30 billion a year. 50% or so goes to education. And that's an important part of our budget, is to take care of the young children and future labor for tomorrow. But that income tax rate will go into effect. There are some triggers in it. If we go into a recession and our revenues do not increase every year, then that reduction will be halted or frozen for 1 year, then we look at it again. So we put some safety triggers in place for that. Many of you may have already gotten your rebate check. If you have, raise your hand. I haven't seen mine yet, but you should be getting a check back from the state of Georgia this week for $500. If you file jointly, you got yours?
I got it.
All right, good. Can you let us borrow it? We don't have the campaign. We got it. So the check's in the mail. But it's true, the checks are in the mail. We had an enormous surplus coming out of last year of about $3 billion. And most governments will spend what they take in. We felt we needed to send that money back where it came from, and that's you, the taxpayer. So if you filed a tax return last year, either single or jointly, you will get a check in the mail. You should be getting that this week, so good news. Other things in the budget, just like you at home, everything's costing more and more and more. A year and a half ago, gasoline was less than $2 a gallon. Today it's hitting $4, headed to $5. We're told in places in our country it's $6 a gallon. I don't want to sit here and get too political, but I can tell you, government policies drive a lot of this. When you saw the Keystone Pipeline being put on hold a year and a half ago, there's consequences to those decisions. The issue in Ukraine and Russia has an impact on it as well. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, but we haven't seen gas prices like this, I don't think, in at least 30 years, probably since the Jimmy Carter days in the 70s. It's very concerning. There's inflation hitting 10 and 12%. Federal government, Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. 30-year mortgages are already above 5%. All of this stuff is happening very, very fast. I put my finger on the decision that the federal government dumped trillions of dollars of cash into the system over the last year and a half, and has created this huge inflation. And it's very, very concerning. We're seeing contracts with the DOT coming in 30 to 40% over their estimates. The cost of material, asphalt has doubled over the last 12 months. Concrete's doubled. Gasoline, diesel fuel has doubled. Labor, you can't find people that are willing to work any longer for what they were working for 2 years ago. People are having to pay more. We have positions at the DOT, an entry-level job on the road crew right here that cleans out culverts, making $12.50 an hour. We couldn't keep them. The turnover rate for those jobs is 50 to 75% per year. So in our state budget, we put in a $5,000 pay raise across the board for every state employee. School teachers got the additional pay raise that the governor promised when he got elected. We put the rest of that bonus and that money in this year. Some of those raises were retroactive, so some of those employees got a check to pay back to the beginning of the fiscal year, and then going forward, they'll be in their paychecks every 2 weeks or every month, however they get paid. We have to keep a good workforce in our state governments, just like you do in your businesses. If you don't, your business will suffer, your product will suffer, your customers won't come back. That's an issue that we're struggling with. The corrections, Department of Corrections, we had a 75% turnover rate in the prison system where the guards were just being paid tremendously low wages. Could not keep them. You could literally make more money at McDonald's than you could in the prison system. And those are the people that are guarding some of the meanest people that walk our planet. So we had to beef up our pay system, our benefits. Also, we had to increase retirement. So it's been a pretty productive year. We did some things because the economy is good. Now, look forward, we're not sure how strong that economy is going to be a year from now. We're a little worried. We're seeing the numbers starting to flatten out. Housing has been strong, but with the interest rates going up, we think that that'll slow down as well. The market will correct itself. So we have to be prepared for when that day comes, and that's why we keep such a strong rainy day fund. We have several $billion in our rainy day balance. We'll mention the suspension of the gas tax. The governor did suspend the gas tax with the help of the legislature. We passed that bill to suspend it through the end of May. So most people don't even know how much you pay at the pump for gas tax. It's 29.30 cents a gallon for the state portion. There's an 18 cents per gallon federal tax, and then the local governments get the sales tax on top of that. So we suspended that state tax of 30 cents per gallon through the end of May. Just this week, gas has shot back up even more. So I think the governor will be announcing in the next week to 2 weeks that he will extend that suspension probably through summer, at least until August 1st. So we hope that will take care of it. We hope the gas prices will start to come back down. Now, that does not take money away from the DOT. We're using some of that rainy day money that I talked about in the reserve account to backfill the money that we would lose at DOT had we not had that rainy day provision. We're talking about $175 million a month when we suspend the gas tax for that 30 cents a gallon. So it's a lot of money. We don't want to jeopardize all those important DOT projects, so the governor is taking care of that through the general fund. A lot of transportation projects in Georgia. Transportation as a whole, we have the busiest airport in the world. We lost that designation during the pandemic. I think China continued to have their growth and all, but Atlanta has now recaptured that designation again. We're the #1 busiest airport in the world. We have the busiest ports on the East Coast and the fastest growing ports in the nation. A lot of goods and services are coming through Georgia. We have a good interstate highway system. The ports of Brunswick and the ports of Savannah are now leading the nation in all of those imports and exports. So we've got to continue to put money into our transportation systems. The Georgia 400 corridor is being upgraded. I know if you drive through here, from here to Atlanta, you hit that construction at Browns Bridge Road, that overpass in Kenville. That's a local contractor out of Forsyth County called Vertical Earth that's doing that work. That project will be finished sometime later this year. It's going to be a really nice improvement. That'll be exit 18. Right now, exit 17 is the last turn. That will be exit 18. Down at the intersection of 400 and 285, there's over $1 billion of project going on in that intersection. All of those overpasses are being constructed. A lot of construction delays in that area. All I can tell you is be patient. Get on your apps before you leave and see what's going on, because there are some road closures down there at night, and there'll continue to be some road closures for the next 12 months. We're going to add 2 more lanes up Georgia 400 for express lanes. Some of those will allow for express buses, but also if you have a peach pass, you'll be able to get in those express lanes and move at a much faster and more predictable pace. It's not going to cost us anything to build those lanes. It's going to be monies that will be brought in with private companies. They'll build them, and then we'll recoup that cost with the fares. If you don't want to pay the fare, don't get in the express lane. But we believe that that's worked well on Interstate 75 North and also 85 South in McDonough and Henry County. We'll continue to work on 285. That's a huge part of our transportation network. We're adding 2 more lanes on the 285 perimeter on the north end as well. So billions of dollars are being spent in a road system. Here locally, you're still seeing roundabouts being put in. We're resurfacing all of our state routes. We have one of the best road systems in the country, and it's because of the work we did 7 years ago when we changed the gas tax in Georgia. So you're seeing some of the benefits of all of that policy that took place back then. An issue that does challenge us, though, on the transportation side is the introduction and the growth of electric vehicles. We talk a lot about gas tax. That's what funds roads and bridges. Every dollar of gas tax in Georgia goes to DOT. As we start to see more electric cars being introduced into the marketplace, you know they don't use gasoline. So we lose all that gas tax when you start to replace your cars and your combustible engines with a battery. So we're working on a policy this summer. There's a study committee between the Senate and the House. We'll be going around the state looking at how do we replace that revenue. Do we put a fee per mile that you travel in your electric car, or do we do it based on a yearly rate? Some people travel 1,000, everybody pays the same. I think it should be based on the usage. If you drive 100,000 miles a year, you should pay more for the use of that road than someone who just commutes back and forth 3 or 4 miles from their house to their job. So we'll be looking at those issues. We have 2 big EV manufacturers right now that are either coming to Georgia or looking at that. Rivian, you've heard about Rivian in the news. They're going to create almost 8,000 new jobs east of Atlanta over in the Walton County area. We also have negotiations going on with Hyundai, which will build a plant near Savannah in that Hoover area. There'll be 6,000 to 7,000 new jobs in that area as well. Both of these major manufacturers are going to build electric cars. So there's a push from the federal government to get rid of the combustible engine over the next 20 to 30 years. I'm not ready to give up my gasoline engine. I like that V8 when I need to get on it. I think the day will come, maybe not in my lifetime, but we'll see it. Almost all the trucks and cars on the road will be EV related. So we're in for a change. The question is, how do you charge that electric car if you go from here to Savannah? Most of them won't go that far without a charge. So we're going to be looking over the summer, how do we set up charging stations to allow for these cars to get recharged. Currently, you can pull into the racetrack or QT and fill your truck or car up in 3 or 4 minutes. Some of these electric cars can take hours to recharge unless you get a quick charging station, which you can do in 10 to 20 minutes. The federal government is trying to entice this industry to grow quicker, So they're giving Georgia $120 million to come up with a charging station network plan. So the DOT has to submit a plan by August 1st on how they're going to set up all these charging stations, whether it be at rest stops, gasoline stations, or certain corridors. And so we'll be playing an important role in that as well. So there's a lot going on in the transportation industry. See if I can shut down now. I'll finish up with some of the things that we've been working on over the last 6 years. I've shared with you some of the efforts I've had in broadband deployment. We are happy to announce that Georgia has done well. There's been, I guess there's been $4 billion of federal money given to the state of Georgia. We've deployed about $400 million of that in broadband this summer. Governor Kemp announced recently all those broadband grants. Dawson County is a recipient of some of that money, along with Jasper, over in Pickens County, Gilmer County, Fannin, Lumpkin, and Union County. And those are all the counties in my district. We are working with the Amicalola Electric, LJ Telephone, and Windstream in this region to get fiber optic cable to every home in the area. So you will be seeing that upgrade this year and next year. Windstream was a big partner in that deployment. We've had issues with Windstream in the past, but they came out of bankruptcy a year or so ago, and they were bought by a private equity firm. They have now put up a lot of money to match some of these state and federal grants. They received $174 million out of the pot of money for all the counties they serve. So we're pleased to see Windstream on the move, and so you'll be seeing that internet service upgraded in your home soon. So we appreciate the patience that you've had with that. We've had a lot of calls over the years, people wanting faster internet speeds. I compare the internet to the deployment of the interstate highway system back in the 50s and the 60s. You can't do business today without the internet, just like you can't do business without trucks being able to travel across the country on the interstate highway. So good things are coming to rural Georgia, and it's because of the efforts of Brian Kemp, our governor, doing a great job, and I hope you'll support him next Tuesday. So with that, I'll stop and we'll take questions from anybody that has any.
No, one second.
Okay, I have a question. I actually have a couple of comments and a question for each of you. There's a lot of things that I've heard today that are great for Georgia, and I'm pleased and happy. One of the things that is especially interesting is that we have money for roads, we have money for broadband, we have money to expand health care, we have money to, we finally paid the full QBE amount for education this year, so all that's great. But I do want to say that I think credit where credit is due should be allowed. And that is that although the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure bills did spend trillions, billions of it are coming back to Georgia and to all the other states so that you can do exactly the things that you're bragging about. So that I want, as a statement I want to say. The other thing, Will, is a question to you as a teacher. And I was a teacher, you were on the Board of Education. And if I'm a teaching an 8th grade class, and a child comes in last week after the horrific hate crime that was committed in Buffalo, and says to the teacher, I heard some stuff on the news and I'm not sure what it means. So could you tell me what a hate crime is? And could we talk about what white replacement theory is? And could you tell me why that man, or that boy who's only 18, went in and shot 10 black people in a grocery store? Could we talk about that? Because it really concerns me. So with the new HB 1084, are teachers going to be allowed to talk about that?
Teachers will be able to talk about anything in history or current events under professional, academic, accuracy without espousing their personal political belief. So yes, the teacher can say that an evil person killed and murdered people from hatred in their heart, which is awful. Now, Bet, I know that you have different political persuasion than I do, and I respect you. But I don't believe that a business luncheon is the best place to try to bait me into a political statement. You asked me one question, respectfully, to try to define what a hate crime is, ma'am, hatred knows all skin colors.
That's right.
Hatred is evil and murder is already a what? A crime. And I hope that they punish that guy swiftly and that justice is served. Any teacher will be able to answer that
So
question.
they won't be punished?
No, they won't be punished. No, there's no punishment at all. And again, the bill did is it allows what we've done in Dawson County schools when there's gun incidents to ensure parents can raise their hand and say, this is what happened in school today. We want to be heard. We want to make sure that our child's not being labeled something because they happen to have the same faith or background or skin color or whatever of this child or even that person that murdered somebody. And I have no knowledge as to what white replacement theory is, so I can't answer that. I have not studied it. I don't believe to me that's fringe. That's one of those far left or far right ideas. And I'm ensuring that we don't have that in our classrooms, especially in K-12.
You should not.
Okay. Yes.
I just want to say from a local leadership perspective, I appreciate both of you guys being accessible, being able to be a part of our local government and the way that we operate and being able to support for us at the state level. Thank you both for what you do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Quick question to Steve. So when you talk about the charging stations that are being, the grid being developed for August 1, is the anticipation of that those charging stations will be state or federally funded, or the grid will be created such that a private entity can come in and build a charging station and charge a rate per kilowatt or whatever it is to charge those cars? Is it a private entity driven eventually, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I think the federal government's intention is to sort of prime the pump. They want to get the network started. No one's going to buy an electric car, in my opinion, as a permanent replacement vehicle unless they know there's some consistency and dependability out there, that there's a charging station between here and wherever you're going. So I think the idea is for the federal government to build the core infrastructure and let the states monitor that, implement that plan, whether that's through privatization, through P3s, which you can do really easily with, your QTs and racetracks of the world. But we want, personally, I think that the private sector should be the ones who build the charging stations, charge for the recharging of their vehicles, just like you and I have to pay racetrack when we buy gas. Or mom and pop grocery stores do the same thing. In my opinion, the government should not be the ones who are charging and collecting that fee. The federal government's going to basically pay for that initial infrastructure. It's going to cost literally hundreds of millions of dollars just in Georgia alone. And then private gas stations and hotels, shopping centers, you're already seeing them. I went to the Braves game last week, and there was probably 30 or 40 charging stations right in front of the Delta parking deck. Well, guess what? There was not one electric car sitting there being charged. Instead, they let all these big monster trucks, F-150s and F-350 trucks park there because they can't get in the parking deck. So we got to build bigger parking decks for diesel trucks. So it's going to work itself out. But the problem is going to be when they get off 2 miles off the interstate, then where do you charge your car? Well, those stations aren't there. A lot of people that buy electric cars today have a charging station in their garage that hooked up to their meter on their panel, their main panel in their home. Kilowatt hours is roughly what, 10, 12 cents a kilowatt at your home or your office. So it doesn't take long to figure out how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost about $15 to $20 to charge a car to use a fast charging station. Now you have to add the government's tax on top of that if you're going to replace the loss of gas or fuel tax. So you could be looking at $20 to $30 to refill a battery if you're traveling from here to Atlanta or Savannah and you have to stop and recharge. So it's still going to be cheaper than gasoline, but it's not free. There's this idea out here that electric cars are going to save the planet. Well, how do you create electricity? Nuclear, coal, natural gas, wind, if the wind's blowing, and solar. So you gotta build power plants. We can't operate these lights in here today off of wind because the wind's not blowing outside. So it takes a balance in that portfolio. The PSC monitors all that. Georgia Power is moving quickly toward solar panels, big solar farms. I was in South Georgia last week where they flipped the switch on one of the biggest solar projects in the southeast. That was a cool project.
Where was that?
Down in Perry, Georgia, they flipped the switch on a huge project. It's a big 200-300 acre solar panel project. So we're moving in the right direction on all that. But to go back to Betty's comment earlier about don't forget where the money came from, Joe Biden didn't make that money. That's the people's money. And whether it's George Bush or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton, the money that we appropriate in Atlanta is your money. We have to be accountable for that. I wish Washington was more accountable. Both parties, not just Republican versus Democrat. Trillions of dollars have been dumped into the monetary system in this country over the last 2 years. And before that, we've seen it. And it's created a heck of a problem for us. We've got to be careful not to overdo it. The money that we're seeing being spent on infrastructure, in my opinion, is a good use of funds. I think it's an appropriate use of funds for the government to invest in infrastructure because it has a payback. Some of the projects that you see on these spending bills are terrible pork barrel projects. Bridge to nowhere. You've heard of that before. $200 to $300 for a hammer for the defense program. We've got to be careful not to just waste money and stick tens of millions and billions of dollars onto these budgets just because some legislator or some congressman who's a powerful congressman gets to bring home something to his or her district. So I support common sense spending, but it has to be within the scope of what government's purpose was. And it's gotten out of control on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I acknowledge you are correct that credit is due. And the credit I see is to the American taxpayer. Whether that's the state taxes you pay, it gets redistributed. My biggest concern is that you've got two different sources. One of them are actually real dollars that have been collected based on taxation, and then you have the printing of money, which is an entirely different argument, but we don't have a balanced budget. I mean, in all 60 years, we've had issues, and we've balanced the budget twice in that period of time. So federally, I still got a lot to learn, so I'm not running for federal office, but that's a big issue. So to me, it's the credit for all of the funding that we're seeing should be primarily given to the taxpayers that are funding those projects. That's just my perspective. And then just for one of the clarification, QE formula has been fully funded. It was fully funded the first time under Nathan Deal in his last year in office. It was funded for the first 2 years, fully funded under Governor Kemp. It was temporarily suspended during the pandemic. We restored the QE funding from the prior year in 2021, and then it was fully funded this year. There's a superintendent that can tell me if I'm lying.
We got funding back for FY22, FY22 amended budget.
And you were fully funded in the prior years too, correct? Yeah. So, and what that says is it's a balance, right? We are investing in what we said. The formula, I believe we need to have conversations and bring in all sides, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, about updating that formula. We've had, three governors that I know of had study committees, and it's very difficult to determine what's the primary valuation system that you're going to derive a state proportional tax from. We do not have a state property tax in Georgia, right? I'm not advocating for a state property tax, right? I don't think anybody in this room wants to have an additional property tax. So how can we find that formula? So there's real work, and I think it's a bipartisan issue. I would love to be a part of something similar that Kevin Tanner did for the healthcare, mental health bill. I would love to be a part of a bipartisan study committee to bring in folks from all walks of life, from all age brackets, from all political persuasions to really talk about how do we want to fund education in this state, both K-12, pre-K, etc. So I hope we can have conversations about that in the future. Yes.
I think you have a question, and I think maybe from you, Steve.
Sure.
You talked about the express lane.
Yes.
That are about 400. How far are you looking at express lanes, but also you said something about the buses coming up?
Yes.
How far are those going to come? And then another question, how, right now, coming up 400, like you said, the bridge at 18. How much longer do we have in Dawson County that we will have extensions, or take Halcyon as at McFarland, they have the bridge overpass? When will we have that or see that in Dawson County?
You know, first, the express lanes are ultimately going to come to McFarland Road in that vicinity right at the Forsyth Fulton County line. The buses will travel on those express lanes as far as Forsyth County. They could eventually come farther if there's demand for it. Will you see fixed rail, MARTA expansion up here? No, I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime. 30 or 40 years from now is possible if that's what public policy drives. Fixed rail is too expensive. You're not going to see a lot of fixed. MARTA can't even justify the numbers on their system inside of Atlanta. So you're going to see bus rapid transit for the most part in the future. Rideshare has been very effective. It's privately owned and operated through Uber and Lyft and those kinds of companies. MARTA is now exploring their own rideshare program to get you from that bus stop or that train station to your home or to your office. So they're looking at different ways. What they're seeing is fixed rail does not work in Atlanta. It may work in New York, Chicago, and some of the subways of major cities, but Atlanta has so much sprawl that I think they've lost the opportunity to do that kind of transit. Will 400 be extended on up here? As soon as Forsyth County fills up and there's no more room for growth, they're coming here. Commissioner, you got some applications for rezonings in the last 12 months, right? Those people are coming here looking for quality of life. They want to be able to live close to work. A lot of them are going to drive up and down 400 as long as it's easy to get to and from Alpharetta and Sandy Springs and on even down inside the perimeter. So this growth is going to continue to come this way. We have to manage it. That's what county commissioners and city council members and mayors do. They manage the local land use stuff. We don't do that. We get our finger in it from time to time, and they get mad and bite us on the hand. But we're all trying to manage all of this together. Growth is a good thing, but it can be a bad thing. It just depends on your perspective. A lot of people live, in Atlanta, work, retire, they want to get away from it. They come up here. When they come up here, they create more traffic, more consumer spending, and what follows consumer spending? Retail stores and businesses. So it's all part of an evolving process.
So would you say maybe 10 years before?
It's going to all depend on funding, but we have a limited amount of money, and we have what's called a STIP. It's a statewide transportation improvement plan. There's thousands of projects on this list that need to be funded, and they prioritize those projects based on traffic counts, congestion relief, and safety. And so as soon as the numbers hit a certain point where drive times are slowed down 20, 30, or 50%, traffic lights are too close together, there's too much weight, okay, we got to expand this roadway. Georgia 400 is one of the busiest in the system. 85 and 75 are also busy, and that's where the money's going, is in North Georgia. If you look at South Georgia, they're not growing. There's obvious reasons where some of that is from. Up here, we have a different quality of life. We have the mountain, we have natural resources, which we want to protect, but people are moving north instead of south.
Yeah, I want to say two things about that, and then just real quick. The other thing is Forsyth County also made a decision that they wanted to prioritize their section 400. So some of that project is being funded by the local all that. So that will also be a part of if it becomes a priority to expand certain roads, whether that's that section or even county road. Right, that's what those folks are looking for. The other piece that you got to think about is what is the 10-year horizon of the adoption of in-home businesses working from home. I mean, I'm in a career, I've been in banking 24 years, actually today. So starting 25th year. And 20 years ago, there was no way that a commercial lender would have been allowed to work remotely from home in this market, in this area. I do 80% of my stuff via a laptop and being in customer places or sitting at my house office. So how many businesses are going to be able to do that? How many people aren't on the road to get to and from work if they become able to work at home? So you're going to see it just a dynamic shift in when we're using our vehicles, how we're using our vehicles, and how often we're using our vehicles. That's just in my mind, that's two competing factors that are going to change the dynamics of road access usage. So.
We have a couple more questions. Yes, sir.
Oh, there's an express bus service out of Forsyth County to downtown Atlanta, and my wife has used it.
Yes.
It's a very nice service.
That's the Greta system, right?
Yes.
The Greta system, yeah.
So we find that through the.
I know, and I've got a question, because we've asked this question for about 6 years, and nothing's been done about it, okay? Maybe you guys can do something about this. But the last bus that leaves from downtown Atlanta leaves right around 5 o'clock. So if you work up in the top of one of these buildings,
You can't get there.
you can't get to the bus.
Right.
So my wife could take it down if someone would bring her home in the evening, but she couldn't use it.
I'll call the director. I'm familiar with all of them.
And I have never been on that bus when it was not packed. And it's a lot of students from Georgia Tech,
Right.
Georgia State, and it's a wonderful ride. I mean, that goes down the express lane. They make it there 30 minutes before I can make it there.
It actually is more self-sustaining than any other transit system in Georgia. Greta does a really good
But
job.
business people cannot use it a lot of times because I can't get from the 31st floor down to the corner down there
Right.
in time to use it if I leave at 5 o'clock.
Where's your bus stop?
Where's my bus stop?
It's-
Kind of right down from the merchandise mall.
Right across from Northside Hospital.
Okay.
Like Baker
Oh, her
Street.
bus,
right
okay.
there.
All right.
But,
Pass that along.
but anybody who works down there, if you're working in a business, you can't pick up sometimes at 5 o'clock
Right.
and walk out. And if you miss that bus, you're pretty much, you'll have to get on the train and come and have somebody pick you up.
We'll
It's
pass
a
that-
wonderful
we'll pass that
service.
along. Thank you.
See, just a comment. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've had a lot of comments from people about our ability to have school for our children, and we live in a great community that really supported that, but that would not be possible without the commitment of Governor Kemp. He ran 4 years ago on local control for local school systems, and he's lived up to his word, and I just wanted to put a positive comment in related to that, because without that, there's people in other states that wanted to have school for their children and weren't able to do that because the governors of those states would not allow that, so we're very thankful for Governor Kemp.
Good. Yes, sir.
There was a caption this morning, early morning, on Bloomberg, and it said that 50% of tax money waste is federal. And you know what? You look at it, and that's true. So I commend the state and our local county for how we spend our money.
I think there's still waste in all levels of government. It's just a matter of trying to get the right people involved to manage it and hire good people to manage the resources. Most of our money goes to capital, for human capital, employees. And so we're always looking for a way to make it more economic, more efficient. Thank you. Last question, anybody? All right, thank y'all for having us.
I'm gonna ask a question that's not gonna be very popular mostly in this forum, but
That's okay.
you know, Steve, you said that the permitless carry, I'll call it that, bill that passed this year, was getting back toward more of what was intended by the Second Amendment. Do you know what the Second Amendment says? What does it say?
There's no gun rights should be infringed.
You jumped right to the middle of the Second Amendment.
Well, I mean, it's more than just that.
It says in order to assure a well-regulated, well, that was the intent of the Second Amendment. So I'm basically saying, when you say you're trying to get back to the Second Amendment, people should know what the Second Amendment says. It talks about
And
well-regulated.
you're talking about the U.S. Constitution, and I'm talking about
Yes.
the Georgia Constitution, that also was amended in the 80s, I think, to allow for local governments to also adopt resolutions toward that. So the city of Dahlonega, I'm not sure if the city of Dawsonville has this, but the city of Dahlonega today forbids anyone from discharging a firearm. Well, that's still a city ordinance, and it's still in effect, and it's still being enforced. We didn't change that. We still allow those cities out there to adopt those ordinances to regulate the use of firearms in their city. So if the city of Dawsonville wants to ban the discharging of a firearm, they are constitutionally allowed to do that today.
Okay, I want to say one more thing. And that is the explanation that you just took away the fee
Yes,
for permitted carry.
yes.
But there was more to it than that. And I read some things from other neighbors on next door. One talked about the process he had to go through to get a permit. And to me, that was just as important as the fee. Because that meant that person, before they were allowed to take a gun and tuck it into their belt and walk into our community, they had to go through a process. And that reminded them there's a responsibility in carrying a gun. And I think that was very important. And you got away with that.
This is what we required prior to this session. If you wanted to take a pistol and hide it on your person, whether under it's in your jacket or in your pocket or in your bag, you'd have to have this card. In order to get this card, you go to the probate office down here in Dawson County and you pay $75, unless the price has gone up. And for 5 years, the government tells you that you can carry that pistol where nobody can see it any longer. And yes, you go to the jail and you show them, you give them your fingerprints. And if you have a prior conviction, you can't have this.
Right.
But guess what? If you're a convicted felon and you get caught with a gun anywhere on your body, you're going to jail because you just committed another felony.
That doesn't correct everything, but
No,
I'll tell you this.
Criminals will always be criminals if they choose to break the law. If a person wants to come in here this morning and shoot any of us, do you think this card would have stopped that? Absolutely not. If you really believe that, then I think you're totally misinformed. People steal guns, they buy guns from their neighbors. There's no requirement for a background check to buy a gun from the neighbor across the street. If you go to a gun shop down here at the pawn shop, then Mr. Mincy will have to do a background check unless you have this card. If you have this card, he can sell that gun to you on the spot. So I'm going to continue to buy my card, because if I want to buy a gun from him, I don't have to wait for that
I think a lot
background
of people are doing
check,
that.
which is still part of the law. And if I want to drive to South Carolina, I'll need to have this as well.
Yes.
Because of reciprocity clause.
Yes.
Some states require you to have a license in that state. Some allow you to have a license from your home state. I'll continue to pay the $75 just for my protection when I travel outside of Georgia. So all we did in this bill was get rid of this card. $75, you no longer have to have the card. You still get to carry
Fingerprints.
But to buy the gun, you still get the background check.
You took away something that would impede someone from just grabbing a gun, sticking it in their belt.
Show me any factual research that would show you that would deter.
Here's one of the nuanced pieces. I really enjoyed having a conversation with a friend of mine that actually contacted me, who is a Democrat, former military, and he is like me, he likes to read history. I'm not going to pretend to be a brilliant historian. My parents were much better than they still a lot to me. If we're being real, when we're talking about history, part of the laws that were put in place originally back post-Civil War, and the reason that there was the issue at one time in our history was to limit certain people from being able to access the opportunity to buy guns, who happened to be different color than me. So this person came up to me unsolicited during the legislative session and said, you know what? I'm as American and as Georgian as you, and the original intent in that person's view was, I'm now not going to be disenfranchised from my Second Amendment right. It is a very difficult issue for some people, but again, in the 24 other states that have this law, there's not been any increase in criminal behavior as it relates to handgun usage. And the people that have been getting permits and buying a gun legally, there's not been any increase in those people committing crimes. It is people that always break the law and currently do not have it. There's just not been any data to support the increased concern, that's your concern, you have that right.
We'll see here in Georgia, we'll see.
We'll see, but there's 24 other states, I think 17 of them that have had this for 10 years.
The bottom line of my comment, and I won't take any more time, but when you talk about the Second Amendment, talk about the entire Second Amendment.
The entire statistical data supports the Second Amendment. If you read it verbatim.
It's a great discussion, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. I want to be respectful Wade and Senator Steve Gooch. I cannot tell you how lucky we are in our community to have these gentlemen so accessible. And I will say this on top of that, I have called that they haven't called me back or answered the phone, and I really appreciate that.
And I want to brag on this person, because you know what she did for us? Last Thursday, y'all originally scheduled to have this lunch. Y'all were kind enough with a very short notice to move this meeting for us so that both Senator Gooch and I could be with the governor at Blue Ridge, the UNG campus, for the signing of the 2023 FY budget. So we were asked to be there because there were key pieces that we were part of. I was able to be there because you guys were willing to do that. So I appreciate the flexibility of the members and you as being willing to arrange that slight schedule change. So thank you for doing it.
And y'all all came, so thank you to you all as well.